I tell you, I feel like I should just throw this thing out because what has been said earlier today is just so powerful. And I don't know how I can even compete with that or expound any more on that. So today's reading from Romans 12:4 through 13 reminded me of the first class of Befrienders that we had, where we talked about discovering our God-given gifts and our calling. Learning what your gifts are can be a journey in and of itself. I feel that another text that has spoken to me, and most likely the Befrienders members would probably agree, is Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me." Do you have trouble listening or maybe questioning where God is leading you? I think God was constantly trying to get me to use my gifts, but I'm a stubborn one. For me, I put up walls and refuse to listen because I'm afraid to speak in public and put myself out there and lead. Are you afraid to speak in public as much as I am? I used to be so petrified to stand up and talk in front of a group that I couldn't even make a little announcement in church. And I think the whole church knew at that time that of my fear of public speaking. It was a hard no for me. So how did I get from no way to here am I, send me? Putting together a sermon or talk is pretty foreign to me. I'm not eloquent with words, but I have a huge feeling and passions that bubble up, but unfortunately most times fall flat when I'm trying to describe these feelings. Well, in 2007, I was nudged by the Spirit into taking a Bible study class called Unwrapping Your Gifts. It took me quite some time to sign up for this study. I hemmed and hawed about it for quite a time. And I remember saying to one of the leaders that there was no way that I would be getting up and speaking in church. This felt like trouble to me. Little did I know the rabbit hole I was about to go down. The study culminated with each participant discovering the gifts we each saw in each other, which can be quite different from what you feel might be your own personal gifts. Mine was giving care and leadership. Okay, well, at this point, God and I were having a mighty tug of war back and forth. Giving care, okay, I get that. But leadership? Oh, yep, it's clear when they say God does have a sense of humor. I had experienced in my earlier life what Stephen Ministry was all about. For those that don't know, Stephen Ministry and the Befrienders Ministry are pretty close in comparison. My dear father was a Stephen minister, and I could see that it had a profound effect on him when he was actively giving care to someone, and even talking about the Stephen Ministry program. When I was going through a really rough time in my life, I was actually assigned a Stephen minister. This person met with me, prayed with me, was a huge support and comfort to me, and a friend. So I had seen both sides of what the giving and receiving was in this care ministry, and thought that someday I'd like to be a Stephen minister too. So the seed was planted. Well, in 2007, it was time for that idea to come to fruition. Through checking out Stephen Ministry and Befrienders Ministry programs, the Befriender Ministry seemed like the best fit for our congregation. In fact, our Befrienders Manual was written by local authors, Pastor Willard Lund and his daughter Marcia Lund. I spoke with Pastor Lund one day about the Befrienders program, and he was very excited that we wanted to start this ministry in our church. a small group from our congregation, I believe it was like 5, was able to take the study over at the Lutheran Church where it was being taught. The classes were very inspiring for each of us. I think we all felt that we are on the right path, honoring our gifts. When we decided to take part in our church's commissioning service, our group, except for me, excitedly chose the hymns, divided up the text readings and the prayers. When our minister asked if we wanted him to give the message, lo and behold, I opened my big mouth and said, I would share the message. Well, I think that more than my mouth was hanging open in surprise by what was just being uttered. I was kicking myself all the way home because of this rash decision. What did I get myself into? Okay, I think this is where God was having a good belly laugh. But again, that passion and that call had really gotten to me. So on February 10th, 2008, to the surprise of absolutely everyone, including my husband and children, I was the one that stood up and delivered the message of what a befriender was and could do for our congregation and those in our personal lives too. I think my conviction for this ministry far exceeded my fear that day, though I gotta tell you, I was pretty scared. Funny enough, I didn't die. In fact, the congregation gave me such a round of applause that it was as good as God giving me a high five and also the blessing for this new ministry. It was pretty euphoric and a huge milestone in my life. I always knew that we needed to keep growing the Befrienders group, but the timing just wasn't right. After a number of years, our original group dwindled down to just myself, Walt Jackson, and Jean and Denny Blackmore. So earlier this year, when LaVon was approached to start a care team, she tapped me on the shoulder to join her. I kind of felt this was God's way of saying, it's time to make a commitment to launch a Befrienders Ministry group. Your congregation needs this. In the process, we found out that McFarland Lutheran was not actively teaching the class anymore, so we knew that this task would have to be done by our church. I knew Marcia Lund slightly, so I contacted her for advice and to even see if workbooks were still available. She did have books, and she was so excited that we wanted to teach the program in our church. It has been wonderful getting better acquainted with her, and I had hoped that she would be here to help with our commissioning, but unfortunately she is sick. So those again learning on this first phase were Martha Olson, Judy Tabor, LaVon Gieslin, Cody Duane, Lynn Bellow, Lynn Etnier, Marianne Race, and Trish Calhagen. Assisting me was Walt Jackson and Pastor Brian. All of the original group have expressed their intentions to move on to the next phase of learning, which will start next year. We would love to add more from our congregation, as this will be an ongoing rotation of classes each year. If this seems like something you would be interested in learning about or doing, please speak to me or even one of the befrienders. We'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. So this phase of learning covered topics on giving and receiving help, cancer and life-threatening illness, grief, dementia, Alzheimer's, and parenting a parent, mental illness and schizophrenia, and alcoholism. A few of you in our congregation may have helped us by being a speaker on one of these topics. Thank you so much. You enriched our learning and touched each one of us. You also enabled us to open up so we could share some of our own personal and a lot of times painful experiences. This brought the group very close together. There were tears shed by all as we formed an unbreakable bond of love. This was spiritual stretching and growing for each participant, and I can't express enough how proud and honored I am to be a part of this group. By about our fourth class, most in our group were anxious to get started befriending. Some made concerted efforts to get out and visit those unable to make it to church. Many asked, how can I be a befriender? Little did we know the opportunity would be presented to us soon enough. How everyone stepped forward, befrienders and congregation alike, to help the Blackmore family was such a beautiful thing. The timing of our classes could only be explained as being led by the divine. In closing, there's a beautiful song in our hymnal, which we will be singing for our closing. The words always touched me. It always seemed like a message from God, reminding me to tap into my spiritual gifts. It's called Spirit of the Living God. It goes, Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. I would like to challenge each of you during this Advent season to listen with your whole heart and be open to God's nudges, recognizing the gifts God has given you, and have the faith to implement them. So then we can all join together and say, here am I, send me. Amen.